All right, welcome to our Tuesday Rev Up series. We are covering today writing offers and getting your offer accepted. So let's get started. If anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat box. You can unmute yourself. You can interrupt me. You can raise your hand, whatever works for you. I'm really easy going when it comes to that, but I do want to make sure to get your questions answered. But let's get started. All right, so when working with buyers, we are talking today mainly about the, this shows the pending path, but we're really focusing today on just step one of this pending path, which is the contract. So we're going to talk about showing properties and then writing and getting offers accepted. Our goal during this process is to guide our buyers through the offer process, but we don't ever want to force them into something. So just kind of keep that in mind. As we are preparing to write the offer, know that the buyer is going to select the property. We're going to talk about writing offers on multiple homes, how to talk with the listing agent, preparing a CMA, communicating with clients. We're going to cover all of those things today as we move through this step 8 of preparing to write the offer. Keep in mind, at this point, we should have already shown the property. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. It may have been last week, but we talked about showing properties, best practices. I probably should do another tech training showing you guys how to set it up in Berries. You can either lead it over into showing time and route all the properties. But we should probably do a tech training. Maybe over the summer, we'll just focus kind of on tech trainings a little bit more because we've kind of run through our Rev Up a couple times this year already. So maybe that's what our focus will be this summer. I'll have to keep that in mind. Maybe Abby will remind me of that later on. So buyer is going to select the property. Okay. Please let that be the case. There have been times that I've actually talked buyers out of writing offers. So I feel like sometimes, especially as the market starts to heat up, buyers feel like they need to settle on a property. And sometimes I've had buyers that even feel guilty for making me show them more properties. Okay. It's about finding the right property. If we do a good job during our buyer consultation appointment, remember we talked about that we want to know what their must-haves are, what their bonus items are, and what their knockout items are. And if we do a good job during that and we talk with them about what their must-haves are and why that's important to them and get to the bottom of it, it should help us to be able to really narrow down the property choices to only those that really match their properties. Our goal ultimately is to show somebody 3 to 5 properties max before we're writing an offer on a property. If we do our job really good on the consultation, it makes it easier to do that. It also makes it easier to do that. We talked about when we're showing properties, if we're not finding a property that's matching what their needs are, to revamp and reevaluate what those lists are, the must-haves, the bonus items, and those knockouts, to reevaluate it as you go so that you can change up the properties that they're looking at. Our goal is not to show them every property on the market. Okay, as we're going through properties, we're going to be able to narrow down what it is specifically they are looking for so that we can pinpoint exactly the property it is that they are looking to buy. That being said, if we walk into a house and they're like, well, yeah, I guess this one's okay. I guess we can write an offer on it. My question to them is going to be, are you sure this is the home that you want to spend the next couple of years of your life in? Because I'm looking at you, I'm hearing what you're saying, and this doesn't sound like it's the right one. Well, yeah, but I'm just tired of looking at homes, or I feel bad dragging you around. Like, don't feel bad dragging me around. This is my job. My job is to find you the perfect property. And if this is not it, let's not settle. So it's okay to like question somebody on their desires when you can tell that that's not the property for them. And in the same aspect, we talked about watching for body cues as they're walking through the properties. Usually you can tell the ones that they really like. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. So that we can kind of direct them in the right way. Writing offers on multiple homes. We are allowed to write multiple offers on, or write offers on multiple homes. On the market conditions advisory, I believe it is, it talks about writing offers on multiple homes. We are completely within our realm. That being said, there is always a risk to that if we're not disclosing to the agents that we're submitting offers, that we've written multiple offers, because here's where we're at. If we're writing an offer on this house, and we're writing an offer on this house with the intention that we're only going to move forward with one, the residential purchase agreement says that the buyer is going to move forward in good faith. And so if we're submitting offers on 2 properties with the intention of ultimately only buying one, the buyer's truly not moving forward in good faith. They're planning to cancel based on one of the other contingencies out there, not the contingency of I submitted multiple offers on properties and this is my second choice. If it is, put that in the offer. If it isn't, like, just be aware that if the buyer tries to cancel, if both offers get accepted, the buyer tries to cancel on the one they don't want, the seller technically could seek legal counsel and potentially go after that buyer for not completing the purchase in good faith. So there's always that risk. I've never seen it done, but there's always that risk. It does talk about it. Again, I believe it's on the market conditions advisory. It does talk about that, but you can write offers on multiple homes. You don't see this as much, although as the market starts to heat up, you might see it more where you've got, 3 properties that match their criteria that could be the ones, the magical home, and they're all reviewing offers on Tuesday. And you hate to miss out on one, right? So that's usually where multiple offers comes in. We always want to make sure that we talk with the listing agent prior to writing an offer. We'll talk more about that here in a minute, but we want to have that conversation. When are they reviewing offers? What's the seller looking for in an offer? How do they want that offer submitted? I usually confirm the information as far as the seller's names with them. We want to have that conversation and build that rapport. The more rapport that you can build with that listing agent, the better off you're going to be when submitting an offer on a property. In addition to that, once the buyer finds that property, we want to make sure to prepare a market analysis of it or look at comps, right? It doesn't have to be like an official certified CMA report, but we want to look at comps. How is that property priced? Is it priced low? Is the listing agent expecting multiple offers? Is it priced high? Is it priced right on the money? Where do we recommend that offer come in at in order to get that property? And again, as we're preparing that CMA and we're communicating with our clients, all of the things that we recommend are just recommendations. It's ultimately our buyer's choice as to how they decide to write up their offer and what they decide to include or not include, the purchase price at which they decide to submit. Sometimes our buyers are a little thick-headed. Sometimes it takes them 1 or 2 properties of writing offers and missing out on it to realize that how aggressive or what a true offer is going to look like. Okay, so preparing to write the offer, that's kind of our process. Buyer's going to select the property. Again, we can write on multiple homes. We want to make sure we have a conversation with the listing agent. We're going to prepare that CMA report or look at comps. And then we're going to communicate all the information that we've ascertained from all of those methods. We're going to communicate that with our clients so that they can make an educated decision when putting together their offer. Okay, the obvious areas of an offer are going to be price and days to close escrow. Okay, those are our 2 obvious ones. In addition to that, all of the following comes into play. The loan terms, whether it's an FHA, VA, conventional, USDA, hard money loan, cash, right? The amount of the good faith deposit might come into play as well. We know as realtors that it's almost impossible to keep somebody's deposit, but fortunately the seller doesn't know that. And so the seller sometimes will see that, oh my gosh, they've got a big down payment or big good faith deposit. That means they're really serious, right? And so increasing that good faith deposit may help you to get your offer accepted, especially if there's multiple offers. You've got contingencies in the offers. There are 8 contingencies in the defaulted offer. You can add a 9 and you can always write in more for additional contingencies. The main ones are going to be your loan contingency, your appraisal contingency, your physical investigation of the property, review of seller's documents, the preliminary title, review of leased and liened items, any HOA documents. And there's one other that I'm drawing a blank on. Number 9 would be the contingency for the sale of the buyer's property. Obviously, we only use that if we have a property to sell. And then again, you could write in additional contingencies. Like you could write in a contingency that you've written multiple offers. And if the other one accepts, then you would cancel this offer based on that contingency. So there's lots of options there. Deborah, do you have a question?
Yep. Is that where we would write in homeowners insurance or fire insurance?
Your homeowner's insurance is actually already part of that investigation contingency. It's written in there.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, so it falls underneath that investigation, the insurability of the property.
Okay.
Yep. So you don't have to write it in separately. If you were going to remove contingencies, but you wanted that insurability in there, you could write that in as a separate contingency for sure.
Okay, because yeah, that seems to be happening. The last transaction I had, she got loan contingency and everything was ready to be removed, but she hadn't found homeowners insurance.
Yeah. So that's under the investigation contingency. If you have listings, I highly recommend that you go to your insurance people and get 2 or 3 different quotes for insurance on that property that you can submit so that potential buyers have the options. They're in front of them.
As the sellers or listing agent, you could do that.
I would highly recommend it as a listing agent. Yes.
And where do we go now with nobody insuring anything?
Yeah. So there's places that are insuring. Do some research. Usually if you go to insurance brokers, they're going to be maybe a little easier to find somebody that's insuring properties in those areas. I know that I've got a couple. If you message me later, I can shoot you over. I've got a couple of insurers that do specifically up in like the greater Sacramento area, Placerville, El Dorado, those areas. So they should have no problem with the Vacaville area as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that's a lot of agents in those outline areas that list in places like Placer County, El Dorado County. A lot of those agents now are just making this common practice. It's as common as getting like a pre-listing inspection done. They're getting those insurance quotes so that people know going into it approximately how much that insurance is going to cost them and that it is insurable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And
I have a 3-acre vacant land in Fountain Grove, Santa Rosa, where it was a burnout. So that's my thing is how are they going to get insurance to build?
Insurance. Yeah, and vacant land to sell that property, they don't even need insurance. But when
but somebody who's going to buy it wants to know, can you get insurance to build?
Yep. Yeah, so message me later. I'll shoot you over some referrals of some insurance agents to give a call to.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition, some areas of the offer that you may want to come up front with would be repairs, right? Especially if you've got a VA lender on there. You may want to address the repair issues ahead of time so that you're pre-negotiating those. And then also some other items that come into play when writing an offer are going to be the fees. Who pays what, right? Who pays that title, the escrow, who pays the transfer tax, who's going to pay for any government required reports, who's going to pay that NHD, the smoke detector. There's so many little nuances in there. So all these things can be part of the offer that can be negotiated on and that you can change up to make the offer more appealing. Okay. Some other items that may come into play in addition to those are going to be the seller's needs, right? What does the seller's needs? What kind of escrow time frame are they looking for? Are they looking for a quick close? Are they needing a 60-day close of escrow? Does the seller need time in the property after the close of escrow, right? A seller rent back. Are we going to offer an appraisal guarantee? That's there on the residential purchase agreement. It talks about the appraisal contingency, and then there's a line on that that says the property to appraise at purchase price or blank. If you fill in the or blank, that's the appraisal gap. And I've seen this done incorrectly lots of times. So when we go to fill that out, if we're offering $700,000 and we're willing to pay $20,000 in an appraisal gap, right? So if it appraises for less than purchase price, we're willing to come in with $20,000 cash. That would be the appraisal guarantee. On that line on the contract where it talks about the appraisal contingency, we're gonna write 680,000, right? 700,000 minus 20,000. We're not gonna put in 20,000. If we put 20,000 on that line, what it says is, hey, we're willing to move forward with this purchase as long as it appraises for $20,000. Okay, and that's not what we're doing. We're willing to pay a $20,000 gap, so $700,000 purchase price minus the gap that the buyers are willing to pay goes on that line. So 700,000 minus 20, 680,000 would go on that appraisal guarantee. You can include things like an escalation clause. Okay, an escalation clause is, hey, my buyers are willing to pay 700,000 or my buyers are offering 700,000 and we're willing to pay $5,000 over the highest offer up to $750,000. Okay, we usually write in something like proof of highest offer on there. And what does that mean? We're going to offer 700,000, but if somebody comes in at 720,000, our offer automatically increases, right? It's like on eBay when you put like your max bid on eBay, right? Our offer automatically increases by 5,000 over that highest offer. So now we're at 725,000 automatically. Okay, and all they have to do is just, send back a counter offer or an addendum to our offer stating the final purchase price is 725,000. Give us proof of that highest offer, and we are officially in contract. So that would be how an escalation clause works. Some other things that you may want to include would be buyer credits. Are we looking for a credit to the buyer for closing costs to be able to buy their rate down, for repairs that the buyer foresees that property needing? This also, we talked about this yesterday when we were talking about the BCA form, where it's the, we talked about the commission, right? We're going to put in a commission on our BRBC form, our buyer representation and broker compensation form. And if the seller is not offering a high enough commission to cover the buyer's obligation, we could always negotiate that in as a buyer credit instead of negotiating it in as an increased commission. So that could fall into place there as well. Keep in mind when we write buyer credits, if it's a financed offer, we need to talk with the lender of what the max amount of credits the buyer can receive is. Because if the lender, usually what it comes down to is it comes down to closing costs. So the buyer can get credit in the amount of their closing costs up to, it's usually 3 or 6%, depending on the loan type. But if their closing costs are only $10,000 and we've negotiated $15,000 in buyer's credits, that additional $5,000 that the buyer is not allowed to take, it just goes back to the seller. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. We always want to have those conversations with the lender up front. We also want to make sure that we know if there's any specific offer review dates, right? Or are they accepting preemptive offers? So all of these things may come into play when writing that offer. The other thing that may come into play too, we just touched on the lender. Having that conversation with the lender up front, knowing the type of program, knowing what the rate's going to be, knowing all of those details, as well as seeing if the lender, we need to know how fast the lender can get it closed. If we're going to write a short escrow, we also need to know how fast they think they can get that appraisal back. And we want to find out if the lender can pre-underwrite that loan. Can they run it through their underwriting system so that we know we're a done deal? Because then we could write it potentially without a loan contingency on there or shorten that up. Claudia, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Really quick regarding the appraisal guarantee. So, basically what I'm asking, I wrote an offer and I put that we would pay 2,000 over, the appraised value because I knew it would not appraise for what the seller countered and wanted. And it was a VA loan. So I was like, okay, fine. We're willing to pay $2,000 over the appraised value, right? It came and we ended up actually canceling that contract. But when I told the agent it came in, we were in contract for $675 and it came in at $650. She was like, oh no, he's not going to go for that. And it's like, okay, well, that's what we agreed to. So in that moment, if we were still in contract, they can't back out, right?
Yeah, so that's one of those really gray areas. If you call Car Legal, they're going to say, depending on how you wrote it in there, they're going to say, no, technically the seller has to sell, but I've run into this issue on multiple occasions in the past. And so I ended up changing the verbiage that I use on that. So in this case where you're like, hey, I know it's not going to appraise. We offered 675. I'm not going to write in on the line 673, which says that, hey, we're good as long as that. We're saying, hey, we'll pay $2,000 over the appraised value wherever it lands. So usually what I do is I either put that under like other loan terms or I put it under other terms on the contract. And the verbiage that I generally use on that one is that the buyer to pay $2,000 if appraisal does not come in at contract price, buyer to pay $2,000 over appraised value, not to exceed, or I say, if property does not appraise at contract price, buyer and seller agree that final sales price will be $2,000 over the appraised value, not to exceed contract price. And I just changed that verbiage up so it's the buyer and seller agree that final sales price will be, because now we've 100% locked them in, even though Car Legal says that, hey, if we have in the contract buyers to pay $2,000 over appraised value if appraisal comes in low, they will say that would stand up in court if the buyers wanted to go through, you know, a 7-8 month legal process to force them to sell the property.
Right.
But yeah, it's become this kind of gray area. I've seen multiple contracts cancel over arguments over that verbiage. And then sometimes what the sellers will do is the sellers will come back and counter it and say, you know, buyer to pay $2,000 over appraised value if appraisal comes in low, as long as property appraises at a minimum of X. So that they put that bottom in, so that we have the ceiling as the contract price, and then they put a bottom in to say that, hey, we're willing to do that, but not if it comes in lower than, you know, 665. So there's a couple ways to do that. But yeah, I mean, if you were to go to Car Legal or you have your clients reach out to a real estate attorney, if they were dead set on buying that property, the legal would probably recommend that they start legal proceedings. They would record an action against the property so it couldn't be sold, and then they would take it to legal. But again, you're tying it up for months and months before your buyers would ever be able to get into that property, going through that battle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other questions before we proceed forward? Sean, I missed it. Now you have to share your popcorn. All right. Make sure that we communicate with the listing agent. I touched on this already. We want to follow the instructions that are listed in the MLS, number one. Okay, so if the listing agent is like schedule through showing time, like schedule the showing through showing time, you could always message them and say, hey, you know, I scheduled my showing through showing time, but I just wanted to check and see. I didn't see it in the MLS. Is there a specific offer review date? Because I think this property really matches my client's needs, right? So we can still communicate with them and reach out. You can call them, you can email them, you can text them, right? There's several different methods. I just had an incident where I had a offer that I was trying to submit where the only phone number listed was an office number, and she had office hours, and it was really frustrating. So I was calling and messaging multiple times a day. I also tried to send an email, but it was hard to track down her email. So just know that, but you don't want to blow up the agent's phone. Okay. We don't want to annoy the agent before we even get our offer accepted. If they have an assistant or TC, feel free to reach out to them. And when we get ready to submit the offer on the property, we want to make sure that we check the MLS for instructions. Do they want it submitted through HomeLight? Do they want it submitted through Glide? Do they have a special email where they want offers submitted to? What does that look like? If you know you've worked with the agent in the past and they have a transaction coordinator, you can always CC their assistant or their transaction coordinator on the offer submission. If I submit an offer through like a Glide or a HomeLight or whatever it might be. I usually will text the agent as well, like, hey, just a heads up, I just submitted our offer on such and such property through Glide per the MLS instructions. So I usually will let them know. And I've already had conversations with this agent before I submitted that offer, right? A couple slides ago, we talked about the fact that we want to make sure that we understand what the seller's needs are. And as part of the pre-offer process, we're going to talk to the listing agent. Okay, super important. We want to call that listing agent. The second our buyers think they may want to submit an offer on a property, we want to make sure to be in contact with that listing agent to let them know that, hey, my buyers are really interested in your property. They're just making their final decisions, but I think we're probably going to write an offer on it. Right? What would make this transition easier for your sellers? Right? Do they want a short escrow, long escrow? Are they looking for 30 days, 21 days, right? 45 days? Do they need any time after the close of escrow remaining in the property? Is there anything that I should know regarding this property, right? We're going to ask all those questions up front so that we know how to draft this offer to make it consistent. Have they had a lot of showings or a lot of activity on the property? Are they reviewing offers as received, or are they reviewing them on a specific date? Do they have any other offers in hand? Just so you know, too, in our listing agreement, it flat out says that agents can disclose the presence of offers on their listings, as well as the amount of offers on listings, the offer price. So it's okay to ask. Most agents, I don't know why, but most agents will be like, oh, I can't disclose that information. Sometimes I point out that actually in your listing agreement, did you know it says you can? But I understand that you feel like you're doing your duty to your clients to not disclose that. So can I ask you, the other offers that you have in hand, are there any all cash offers, or are they all financed? Oh, they're all financed. Okay, perfect. Right, we're gonna start playing this like guess who 20 questions game with that listing agent to try to get as much information about those other offers as we can, so that we can come in with and recommend to our buyers the best offer possible to help it get accepted. Right? Oh, perfect. Is it above asking, or is it at asking? All right. So if I wrote an offer, if we came in 10,000 over asking, do you think that would be solid enough to get our offer accepted? Oh yeah, that would absolutely. Or nah, not quite. The other offer is still probably a little higher, right? So we're going to try to like get as much information from that agent as we can if they're unwilling to give us specifics. Questions about that? All right. If we have difficult agents that we have to work with, that never happens. Nobody's ever difficult. Number one, we need to look at the big picture, right? Sometimes I see somebody's name on the listing and I go, oh, I don't even want to show this property because if my clients like it, it's going to be a miserable transaction. Okay, a lot of those people are no longer in the business, but there's still some people out there that I see that make me want to cry. But the big picture is, it's not funny, Claudia, it's sad. The big picture is, right, who do I represent? And I want to work for the best interest of my buyers. I'm representing the buyers. I want to do right by them. And so my job is to put up with difficult people in order to help their dreams come true. And I'm going to be willing to do that, right? In addition, if we're in the middle of like negotiations, we want to make sure it doesn't become like a war of egos. I've had issues where we were told when we were showing the property, the agent was at the property, oh yeah, that's going to be included with the sale. And then we go to write the offer, we write that in, they go, why'd you write that in? That's not coming. I was like, we saw the property, you were there, you said, yes, it's included. So we wrote it into the offer. Well, I never said that. Right? We don't want to get into this like war of egos or war of who's right. So we just need to figure out a workaround and a way to make it a win-win for all parties involved. And we want to make sure that we review scenarios using the IVEC, which is investigate, validate, educate, and close. Okay. And we want to come at it from that opinion of, do I want to be right? Or do I want to get this property for my clients, and what's it going to take to do that? And so sometimes it requires us to step back from the situation and say, oh, I must have misheard you. I thought that you said that was included. Well, my buyers are really set. They love this property. they would really like to purchase it, but it's kind of pending that item. So how can we make this a win-win for both parties? Is it because the seller spent so much money on that chandelier that they're not wanting to let it go? Is it because they has sentimental value? Like, what's that look like? So if my buyers, okay, so I understand that the chandelier has sentimental value. And I wish that had been posted before so I could mention that to my buyers, but now they're set on one that looks similar to that. So if I put one, we found a close match to it, can we write that into the offer that the buyers take that or the sellers take that chandelier and replace it with a specific one so that it's similar? Then they might be like, yeah, absolutely. Like we could totally do that. We were planning to do that anyways, right? So now we've made it like a win-win. So work through things and try to come at it. And I find that for most conversations that happen when we kind of hit like a stalemate or we're butting heads, if we come back at it instead of saying, well, I want this for my buyers, if we say, well, how do we make this a win-win? Then that kind of diffuses the situation and helps people look at it from a better situation of, well, yeah, we want to sell the house, they want to buy the house, but we're hung up on this one thing, right? And it still, that comes to the same thing when it comes to like repair requests and stuff. And I know I talk with a lot of you. We get into contract on properties and then we write a repair request and then the seller responds with like like they're unwilling to do anything, right? And then we kind of take that out on the other agent, like, oh, this other agent's so unreasonable. No, it's their sellers that are unreasonable, or it's our buyers that are being unreasonable. And we're just trying to negotiate the best possible win for both parties. Claudia, question?
Yes, so the repair request is 3 days, expires on the third day, 5 p.m., right? What if we get it signed? So let's say we're representing the buyer. What if we get it back on the third day at 6:30? But they
yeah, so as long as the sellers have signed it and the buyers are still agreeable to it, then we consider that accepted. Usually if they accept it after the deadline, then what I would have my buyers do is just initial it, that they acknowledge that the deadline has passed, the sellers are agreeing to it, and my buyers are still ready to move forward. So you can have your buyers reinitial it. Same thing with like an offer. If our offer expired, the sellers sign it and send it back to us after the expiration, our buyers initialing that by the seller's signatures is just that symbol of we still want to move forward.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind too, on those repair requests, as sad as this is, the sellers have no obligation to respond to them. So it might expire and be done, and we may never hear anything from those sellers. I think it's rude, but they don't have to respond. So just kind of keep that in mind as well.
Right. So the agent had verbally told us like 2 days prior.
Yeah.
So it was really like nerve-wracking for my poor buyers. Like, because they hadn't done anything. And then I get it and it's after 5 and I'm like, so I'm just, I don't know, covering my bases.
Yeah. Yep. Just have your buyers initial it so that everybody can say that we're in agreement on moving forward with that. Try not to be condescending or rude to other agents. And then just remember that we're in this for our buyers. We've got this. We've got this. Difficult buyers, another situation that we encounter. Sometimes we feel like we're like pushing the buyer ahead and like trying to get them to move forward. We finally get them in contract on their perfect property, and then all of a sudden they're like, I think we need to cancel this, that, the fact that there's a light plate missing, a switch plate cover missing, like I'm not comfortable moving forward with it. And you're like, that's totally unreasonable. Like it's a 99-cent fix at Home Depot to replace that, right? So number one, never talk a buyer into a home, but we need to determine whether it's just fear, right? That hesitation, or whether it's a legitimate objection. And again, we want to go back to that IVEC method, right? We want to investigate, validate, educate, and close. So if we've got a buyer that all of a sudden's like, oh my gosh, so we were talking last night, we decided this isn't the house for us, right? And you're not gonna just be like, oh, well, let me send you over that cancellation. You're gonna be like, oh, so why did you decide this isn't the house? Well, we were just looking at those inspection reports and they just seem so scary and There's so many things listed on there on that home inspection, and oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming. Wow. I can totally understand how that would be overwhelming. Those home inspection reports, they are scary. But you know what we could do is we could three-way call over to the home inspector, and you could have those conversations with the home inspector on those things that concern you, so that he can kind of walk you through how big a deal that is, maybe how easy it would be to remedy, and kind of just educate you on some of those items. Does that sound like something that maybe would help you have a better understanding of the things that you're seeing on that report? Oh, they'll do that? Oh yeah, that does sound better. Perfect. Let's go ahead and make that call. Let me schedule that. What's the rest of your day look like? Let me contact the home inspector and see what his availability is, and then we'll do a three-way call. Oh my gosh, that's so much better, right? So it's just diffusing that situation. So investigate further. Why do you want to do that? What's important to you about that? What seems scary to you, right? Investigate. Then we want to validate those feelings, right? We want to make them feel heard. Then we want to educate them on the process of moving forward. And then we're going to move forward to that close. If it's a big deal, like, well, yeah, remember we had that home inspection done, and there's all those cracks all through the house, and it sounded like the floors were sinking, and if foundation issues can be expensive, and it's not something we even want to deal with, because even if we get it fixed now, like, it might come back and you'd be like, I fully understand, that totally makes sense. I understand not wanting to take on a house with foundation issues, and you're saying you don't want to ask for a credit or ask for the sellers to try to repair it before we cancel. No. Okay, perfect. Let's just cancel, right? So if it's a big legitimate objection, that's one thing, versus like just fear-based type objections. Any questions about that? Remember IVIC. Investigate, validate, educate, close. All right. When we go to present the offer, we've written up the offer. We've included all related documents. We also want to include our proof of funds, right? And that's not just money for what we said was the down payment. That's going to include closing costs as well. So if we're doing a $500,000 purchase with 20% down, which is $100,000, we want to probably have an account that's got $120,000 in it for that proof of funds. Okay. So they can't be seen, but the proof of funds does need to have the buyer's name on it, identifying that the money belongs to them. Okay, so sometimes people like to do like screenshots of their bank accounts on their phone. It's okay as long as it's got their name on it. Okay, we want the letter from the lender identifying the correct purchase price and that they are approved for the purchase. There's some strategy there with a lender letter. If I'm going into a multiple offer situation, we're offering above asking, I'm probably gonna not worry about that lender letter being the exact purchase price. It's okay if it shows like my buyer's max purchase price or a higher purchase price, because I'm trying to build the case that my buyers are better than all the other buyers that have submitted offers on your property. That not only can we complete this purchase, but we're approved for higher, so they're solid buyers at this purchase price. If we're at putting in an offer at or below asking, I probably am going to make sure that lender letter matches my offer price, because I don't want to show all my cards before we get a counter offer. So it's going to match, right? Make sure to include any amendments or addendums with your offer. And if your buyers ask about submitting a buyer letter, be careful with that, because it could be discrimination. However, if my buyers ask me if they can, I never tell them no. Okay. I never encourage my buyers to write letters, but if they ask, I let them. In addition to my offer, just so you guys know, number one, you have to include all the additional documents that come with that offer. So your agency disclosure, your PRBS, your wire fraud, your California Privacy Consumer Act, your offer, your buyer's inspection advisory. There's like the Fair Appraisal Act, and I think there's like one or two more now that you get with the offer. All those things have to be included, so you can't separate those out. Anything that's attached to that RPA, when you pull it into your transaction to update it, it all has to stay. In addition to those documents, I usually have my buyers sign, well, number one, if they've signed a buyer representation agreement, a BRBC. I also include an ABCD form with my offer for them to sign that confirms the amount of commission that is being offered from the listing side of the transaction that counts towards their obligation to me on the BRBC. In addition to that, I usually will print up a copy of the client listing detail and have them initial that as well, so that they're initialing that they've seen all the details regarding that listing. I usually include the market conditions advisory because it talks about the fact that the market is cyclical and that there's ups and downs, and that ultimately the buyer is in charge of making the final decision on what to offer on a property. It does not make sense to have the buyer sign that after they've already signed the offer. So I usually sign it at the same time. And I usually include, in addition to that one, the SBSA, the statewide buyer and seller advisory, because it sets them up from the very beginning of what my obligations are, what the seller's obligations are, what the buyer's obligations are, and the 14 pages of inspections they could have done on a property. And I usually include the Wildfire Disaster Advisory, the WDFA. Wildfire Disaster Advice, no, WFDA, the WFDA, I think is what it is, which talks about, to Deborah's point earlier, that insurability might be difficult because we live in an area and the home that they're purchasing is in an area where there could be fire hazards, and they should start looking for insurance ASAP, right? So I usually include that with my offer as well. In addition, if the listing agent has provided like a HomeLight listing management file with the disclosures and documents and reports and stuff up front, I usually have them sign the cover page of that, acknowledging that they have seen those documents. Okay, I don't sign each one with the offer, but we do sign that cover page that you can print from HomeLight Listing Management. So I include that all with my offer. If we move to a point where the MLS is no longer showing commission, make sure you confirm with the listing agent during that conversation if there is any compensation being offered by the seller to the buyer's agent, to you. And then you would want to include the confirmation of co-op compensation, okay, with your offer if that time comes. As long as it's in the MLS, we do not have to do that right now, or as long as we're part of that MLS. You can submit your offer either via the means necessary that the other agent has instructed you, which is usually like uploading to a system or emailing it over. You can also opt to submit that offer in person. It's less common. In fact, I've never had an offer submitted in person, but you could do that. It does give you permission to be able to do so, and it could be highly effective, especially in a multiple offer situation. And then again, make sure you check MLS for instructions of whether we're emailing it or uploading it in electronic format. And then I alert the listing agent that I am sending an offer over, and I confirm with that listing agent once it has been sent. I want to make sure that my offer is not missed. Any questions about presenting the offer? All right, I make sure to include a cover letter with my offer. If it's an email, I usually include it in the body of the email. If it's not emailed and you're electronically uploading it, you may want to have a form letter that you fill out and that you upload with your offer. This one, the sample offer presentation cover letter says, "Dear listing agent, attached is my client's offer for your blank listing," right? You put in the street address there. "I wanted to let you know that my clients intend to occupy the property as their family home. They have one daughter and another on the way." You may want to be careful with what you put in this. This is an older letter because now it could be seen as discrimination because we've let them know that it's a family and how many kids they have. So we may want to skip that and just say, you know, they're looking to occupy the home as their family home. Even that, it could be discrimination, but they are extremely well qualified with excellent credit scores, substantial income and savings. They love this property. Maybe if the neighborhood means something to them because they grew up there, they've got family that lives down the street or whatever that is. This might be a good time too to embellish like what the sellers have done to the property and how much the buyers loved that feature or the work that they did. Because now they show appreciation for what the sellers have appreciated on the home. Please feel free to contact their lender with their lender's name and their phone number with any questions. I have broken down the key points of the offer for you: purchase price, down payment, financing type, close of escrow, title company or escrow company, who's paying the home warranty, if you put in any other terms or features, right? If there's any contingencies you're removing or shortened, you could put them in there. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. I look forward to working with you on a seamless transaction. Sincerely, Amy Petard, real estate professional. Right? So you're going to put that all in there. I always, when I send them over an email or anything, or when I shoot them over a text message to let them know that I've uploaded the offer, I always include, I look forward to a quick and easy transaction or something like that. I'm assuming that my offer is being accepted. And I want them to like think of me as somebody who can get it done for them. Any questions on a cover letter? All right. When making an offer, you will probably get the price or the terms, but you will rarely get both, right? So it's important to have a conversation with our buyer about what's most important to them. Are the terms more important, like getting a closing cost credit or having a longer escrow, or is a lower price more important to them, right? What's the most important thing? That doesn't mean that, especially if we're the only offer in on the table, we're not going to ask for the world, but we want to know what we can give up. And then keep in mind that there are several responses a seller can do when they reply to your offer. They can accept your offer, which is just as written. And that's always my goal. My goal is to write the offer in such a way that the sellers don't have to counter on little itty bitty terms, that they can just accept it and we can move on. Okay, that's the best way to solidify that house for my buyers. The second option for a seller is they can counter your offer, and they can either send you a single counter offer, or if they've received multiple offers, they can counter with a multiple counter offer, which is countering several of the offers at the same time. So a single counter offer, how that works is I've made an offer to the sellers, and the sellers are saying, hey, we like your offer except for these 5 things. They're then turning around and making an offer to us. So now the ball is in our court. The second we sign that single counter offer and send it back over, we are officially in contract, legally binding. The sellers can't go with somebody else. Up until the point that we sign that single counter offer and send it back electronically to those sellers, they could withdraw the offer, review other offers. There's so many options there. They could move forward with somebody else. So we're leaving the door open until that's signed. If they counter multiple offers at the same time with what we call a seller multiple counter offer, an SMCO, that means that, hey, Amy, I liked your offer, but I also like Deborah's offer too. So we're going to counter both of you. And it could be the same terms. It could be different terms. It could be submit your highest and best, right? So many options there. If our buyers are agreeable to the terms on the multiple counter offer, we sign it and return it. We are not legally in contract yet. The sellers still get the option of waiting till everybody responds to that multiple counter offer, or waiting as long as they want to before deciding which offer to go with, at which point they're going to sign that multiple counter offer again and send it back to us, legally entering it into contract. But until they have a chance to review the return to multiple counter offers, we're not in contract. Now, on either of those items, we can always counter their counter offer. So if they give us either a single counter offer or a multiple counter offer, we have the right to do a buyer counter offer back, at which point we're saying, hey, we like the terms of our original offer. We're willing to accept the terms that you sent back to us on your counter offer with the exception of these items. And then we're going to counter back to them. Or not only do we accept your multiple counter offer, but we're going to make it even better for you because we want you to accept our offer, not whoever else's you countered, right? So it can be totally agreeable. We just want to make it better. Okay, so we can do a buyer counter offer. The other option that the sellers have is they can just flat out reject your offer. Wah, wah, wah. They don't have to respond at all. They might respond verbally of, hey, my sellers decided they don't want to move forward with your offer. You feel free to ask questions so that you can submit a new offer if you would like, but they can reject your offer. The other option that we have is we submit an offer. Maybe we submitted multiple offers. Our better property came on the market. We decided, hey, we no longer want your property. Up until the point that that offer is signed and returned to us, we can do what's called a withdrawal of offer. There's a form for that. I think it's a WO form, but it's called withdrawal of offer. You want to verbally withdraw the offer first. Okay, don't wait to withdraw the offer until you get that withdrawal form signed. I usually will call the other agent and say, hey, Shauna, just a heads up. My buyers decided we don't want to move forward with this purchase. We're withdrawing our offer. And then she's gonna be like, oh, bummer, why? And be like, they just decided this isn't the home for them. I'm so sorry. I wish you the best of luck. Then I'm going to follow up with Shauna with a text message. Hey, just confirming we're withdrawing our offer. I'll have that form over to you here shortly. And then the withdrawal of offer form allows you to say that it's just a confirmation of something that was already verbally done. So I don't wait until I have that signed to withdraw. I withdraw as soon as the buyers instruct me to. So those are kind of your responses and the options that you have available. Once we have a signed, sealed, and accepted offer, we are officially in contract. We will pick up on contract to close with buyers next week. Any questions about the submitting and getting offers accepted? Make sure you log your attendance in the chat box. There's a link to do that. And Shauna has a question.
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you.
Oh, you are
Before-
welcome. You are welcome.
All right. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., it'll be in the office as well as on Zoom. We have Lisa Visa and a special guest from a 1031 exchange company coming to answer all your questions, talk about what a 1031 exchange is, how to deal with those appropriately, the ins and outs, and how to help your clients save their tax shelter on those investment properties. So that's going to be a stellar class. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then tomorrow evening at 7, we have our lead generation series where we'll be talking about getting leads from listings. All right. Thanks everyone for joining me today. I really appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow at 11 with Lisa and her special guest to learn about 1031 exchanges. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you. You too.
You are welcome.